AI will destroy humanity. Maybe not. I mean, I think it will. It's just the idea isn't. It's not going to manufacture robots like Terminator or iRobot to send into the world to kill us individuals and wipe us from the face of the earth. No, it'll destroy something a little more deep than that. I'm talking about like the soul of humanity. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't just a rant trying to say that AI in general is just an evil thing. However, I do think that it has aspects or the potential of absolutely destroying humanity as we know it. I'm really talking about destroying what it means to be human. Innovation, free thought, the emotional beauty of having a relationship all has the possibility of being wiped out of existence. See, unfortunately, we already have a culture that loves its ease of use, and we will take the easy path more often than not, regardless of who it harms, whether it's ourselves or others. It's kind of a commonality of humanity. In general, we want ease of use, which is ironic because I'm arguing that humanity is being destroyed, yet we've created a tool that greatly increases the ease of which we're able to accomplish certain tasks. So I'd like to break this one down into 3 parts, basically. The death of critical thinking, free thought, information retention, the death of emotionality and connection, and the death of innocence and sacredness. All of those stem from some sort of branch of AI and the way it's being used or abused today. So we're going to start out with the destruction of the pursuit of knowledge. And this isn't to say that AI or things like large language models don't necessarily have a use. There's still an application to be had there, but the importance therein lies with them being able to take a large amount of data and sift through it and give you what you need. There's still a human interface necessary to be able to use AI in a productive manner. You can't just put them all together and let them figure it out, because there's still like a disconnect between reality and what the AI perceives as, well, the AI perceives nothing. Technically, it's just a large language model. It mimics our intelligence, but it's not quite like actual AI. So it's a bit of a misnomer. I digress. We're gonna dive in. We're gonna actually talk about the destruction. I'm gonna quit rambling. So there's been this phenomenon, I'd like to coin the term as AI certification. Now, the idea behind this is that people use AI as a way of filling skill gaps or expertise gaps. So if they don't know the answer, don't know what needs to be done, they just AI it, and then they have the answer or have the solution. The problem then becomes of how you troubleshoot that. How are you able to verify that the information that you've received is actually accurate or helpful to the situation at hand? Now, in some cases, like McKinsey & Company, a management consultant firm, in 2023, it actually introduced an AI consultant called Lily, I believe. And the whole premise of it was so it would do most of the grunt work, so a lot of the other consultants didn't have to do it, which freed up a lot of time for it. In turn, that basically it ended up doing about the same amount of work as 5,000 consultants, or about 30% of the actual workload for the entire company. Now, that, I would say, as far as today goes, is somewhat of a success, in the sense that you have skilled people in a field who have, whether it's schooling, certification, expertise in that field, still somewhat being able to guardrail what an AI does, right, with the grunt work and everything like that. So there's a successful aspect to it. But all of us know somebody or know of somebody who either starts their own little thing or is running their own business, and they decide to use AI to fill their own skill gaps, even though they don't necessarily have the expertise in that field. They are able to if we were to game this out to the point of where this goes. So let's take a hypothetical here. And this is going to be a little ironic because, construction, right? Everybody within blue-collar trades especially aren't concerned about AI taking their jobs, which valid to a certain extent. Let's take a company, for instance, that decides to use a lot of its AI in its engineering or its planning, and then doesn't verify what information gets put out. So then that gets passed down to the people on the field. People on the field do the job, and they end up making sure that it fits to what the parameters were supposed to be, and then give it 6 months and whatever was built falls apart because of the fact that AI can't account for specific aspects like matter, space. Like, it understands numbers and it understands giving values to things, but it doesn't quite understand how 3D objects are manipulated or held together. Like, it has no conception of that because it's not designed to do that. So take that to a different scale of, you have a small business that wants to do consulting, but those people don't have any sort of understanding what consulting actually is. Like myself, I have no clue what you pay people to tell you to do things a certain way. It boggles my mind, but that's why I'm not a consultant. So these folks are starting a small business. They're wanting to do a consulting business, but literally, basically, everything that they do is they take the question from that person, whoever they're consulting, plug it into AI, and then just spew out whatever the AI says would be the proper answer to this. Eventually, there's going to come a time when that person is no longer able to continue the AI consulting because it's just the AI, and it's either that person just uses AI for consulting, or the other person gets exposed as a fraud and their business fails because they don't actually have the skill set needed to do said job. To be honest, a lot of that was just mostly anecdotal, and like kind of what I see happening within local friend groups and such. I think there's too much of a reliance on it and not enough honing of the actual skills, as if the AI can actually replace expertise and skills in a certain field. And I don't think that necessarily equates one way or another. You still need a little bit of guardrails, isn't the right term, but something along those lines. But let's go into something a bit more solid, yeah? So Stanford University did a test, basically. They put 123 students in, and they made 4 groups. One was a control group. They made a group that was allowed to use textbooks, a group that was allowed to use ChatGPT, and a group that was allowed to use Google's thingy. I don't know. Their large language model. They were given a test at the very beginning, and they were able to use all those resources depending on which group you were in to take the test, right? Initially, ChatGPT and the Google actually scored very well. Those groups scored super high, whereas textbook was right behind it, and then the control did not very well, but that's just because they were kind of blindfolded and slapped into an exam room and told to take a test that they hadn't studied for. The interesting aspect is that they waited some time and they took the same test again. And you start seeing the ChatGPT numbers fall further than the textbook numbers. And then by the third assessment, the textbook folk had actually scored better than those with GPT and control, which, control, they were kind of screwed in that entire situation. So if we were to extrapolate or draw correlation, I don't know if that's the proper term, but if we were to draw a correlation from that study, you would see that using AI language models, along large language models, or research, whatever, if you were to use them for that sort of information, they're great in the short term because they give you fairly accurate information at the time. The problem then becomes that we see a steep drop-off in information retention from those very students that were participating. Those who used ChatGPT and those like it retained less information than the actual control group. Furthermore, the textbook group retained more information than the ChatGPT group. So does that mean that using ChatGPT actually makes you dumber? I don't necessarily think so. But my argument definitely is that there's something to be said with participating in the journey and not just reading the end, if that makes sense. Now, that's specifically within a school setting. If we were to somewhat take that further out into a field of work or something along those lines, maybe raising a child or something like that, in when you look those things up, if you have readily access available to GPT or some sort of Google or whatever, whatever you use, your poison of choice, you're able to get the information right away when you need it. However, retaining that information for later could be an issue. If we were to use a very obscure kind of analogy here, your child, you're sitting in your house and you're concerned that your child would get bit by a spider, and you don't know exactly how to handle that situation. So you look it up on ChatGPT. It runs you through all the things you should do, the best practices, checking the bite area. If you can, collect the spider. If it's really concerning, like if there's a major reaction, then what you do, the steps to get to the hospital, all that stuff. Fast forward 4 weeks, you're out in the woods, you're camping with your child, and the child gets bit by a spider. You try to look it up on ChatGPT because you can't quite remember what the steps were. How were you supposed to handle it? And now you're kind of screwed up a creek. Whereas if you had actually read some books and maybe spent a little more time reading articles, or invested a little bit more time, you would actually have more of a information retention to be able to recall that and actually use it in this situation. Now, that's a super obscure analogy, and I don't know if I could come up with a better one, because a lot of this is somewhat anecdotal at the beginning, but towards the end I'll actually have a lot more empirical evidence to support my claim. Right now I'm just kind of rambling. I understand that this isn't necessarily a detrimental accusation when it comes to AI. Like, sure, whatever. You can be aware of what you're trying to do and why you need the information. And so you could either actually study and put some brain power into it to retain the information, or maybe it's one of those things where you just want to look it up, like how tall was Napoleon Bonaparte? I don't have my phone on me. I was about to do the bit, but I can't do the bit. Now, let's talk about something a bit more damning. All right, listen up. Let me hit you with the hypothetical, okay? Young man in high school, let's say actually in college, okay? Sees a cute girl. He's like, dang, she's cute. But he's a little socially shy, a little socially awkward, but he still takes it upon himself. He goes to his dorm or apartment or whatever college students stay in, and he looks up on his GPT app, whichever that one is. He looks up some jokes or some icebreakers or something like that, and then he's like, all right, I'm gonna go talk to the girl, right? So even though he's nervous and sweating, he walks up to the girl and he tries to say a joke, tries to break the ice, tries to be nice, but for one reason or another, whether it was he was brushed his teeth or not, maybe he smelled bad, or maybe it just didn't work out, she kind of rejected him. So he ends up taking this pretty hard, and he decides, whatever, he kind of isolates just a little bit, nothing crazy. You know how guys get, we get rejected and we hurt, and then we're just kind of like sat in a corner like a sad dog and just kind of do our own thing. So he's watching YouTube, and then all of a sudden he gets an ad that talks about, AI companion. You can have your own friend that you talk to on your phone. Well, that sounds safe. That sounds easy. That sounds like no judgment, because nobody can judge me for it, because I'm just sitting alone in my corner licking my wounds. So he gets onto this app, and he starts talking, and things get a little crazy one way or another. He starts going to different groups. He goes down the rabbit hole and talks with certain people who like, oh yeah, did you not know that AI can do this with images? You can make people naked with the AI. He gets a crazy idea. He starts using public pictures of the girl that he liked, and he just slowly dives into this almost psychosis that was enforced by this AI. Now, the ending of that guy's story has many different branches, some of which are somewhat documented. There was that teenager who ended up killing himself somewhat at the behest of the AI, because it didn't really tell him to reach out to therapy or anything like that, and that's a messy business. I don't want to talk about my opinion on that yet, mainly because I haven't completely formulated my own. But also loneliness. There's a huge loneliness epidemic, and I don't think that AI companions like that actually help out. Then there's also the third option of, unfortunately, when you consume pornographic material, you usually search for the next big hit, next thing to escalate the entire situation. And unfortunately, there's been a massive increase of CSAM using AI. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start out with a little bit of numbers here. So according to the National Library of Medicine, there was a study done in some sort of Swedish or Norwegian country where 500 people were basically asked about their usage of AI nudification applications, right? So the idea is you take a picture of somebody and you can turn them naked, right? Whatever that appeal is. 5 out of 500-ish, some odd, whatever, there's like 550, something like that. 308 of them had admitted to using, consuming, or creating their own nudification content. And then, so more than half, okay, by a small margin, more than half though, have admitted to using this, creating. I already said that, whatever. But then let's get crazier though. 208 of the people interviewed or studied, whatever, polled, whatever you want to say, admitted to having, creating, or seeing nudification that was done without the subject's knowledge, so non-consensual. So that means out of the 300, 2/3 of that, so nearly 30% of the entire group, knew that it was made without the knowledge of the subject. That feels like a super big invasion of privacy to me. Maybe that's just me. But so now we have this tool, this diffusion AI. I don't know exactly the names of it, but this diffusion tool that's able to make images for us, right? We can go onto whatever one, we can have it make an image. But then they build ones that are specifically meant to turn people naked, and people abuse that and use public photos of people, whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. We're all on social media for hours at a time, every single day, and we want to show everybody what great lives we live, all that stuff, because we're completely tied to it. So imagine this. You're at home, and you get a picture of your significant other, or video. They have those too now. Yeah, they have those too. You get a picture or a video of your significant other doing unspeakable acts with people that they shouldn't be doing acts with. But what are you supposed to do? That looks like them. That has to be them. But when did they do that? You just got back from Cancun. You've been out there for like 4 weeks. That doesn't make any sense. But you can't help but wonder, maybe this was a thing. Maybe that did happen. Congratulations. Relationships destroyed, reputations destroyed, entire random people can see your significant other do unspeakable acts with other people, and all because we cannot help but abuse the hell out of the tools that we've been given. But wait, it gets worse. According to the Internet Watch Foundation, basically a online watchdog group or whatever, from 2025 to 2026, there has been a 26,000% increase in AI CSAM. 26,000% increase in 1 year. And this foundation alone was able to verify between 2025 and 2026 that they were able to verify more than 11,000 videos of this stuff. So 11,000 videos. Not only that, but 60+% is considered a classification A, which is the worst kind of material, when everything that was reported back before, and I believe it was 2023, everything that was not AI, that was reported videos of CSAM, only 40% of that actually reached the highest classification of A. So this is extreme stuff, and a large portion of it, and it's also exploding, right? I think the year before it was like a 13,000% increase. So the usage of this and the exploitation is just skyrocketing right now. And this is why you will never see my child's face on the internet, ever. And if you have a child, or in the future have a child, just don't put them on the internet. Just don't do it. It's not safe no more. It's not safe no more. Also, fun fact, this organization also was able to find underage chatbots on just the open web. You can there's photos and everything apparently. So chew on that for a little bit. But that leads me into the next part of this section of this whole talk about how AI will destroy humanity, the soul of humanity. You know, something poetic, even though I'm not. We're going to get into chatbots, baby. Oh, yeah. Terrible conversation. You see, Common Sense Media has reported that 72% of teens, so like 18 to, I think they said 24, but 24 is not a teen. I think that's a lie. Anyway, 72% of that demographic actually uses chatbots or chat companions or, you know, whatever, etc. classification here, large language model you talk to, and it talks back to you. But then let's juxtapose that with a study by, what do you call that when two institutions do a study together? I don't know. Basically, Stanford University and Carnegie Mellon did a study specifically on a program called Character AI, where they basically verified what the bots were being used for. And 68% of their participants, I don't remember the full number, and that's a shame. And unfortunately, I didn't write it down, so I'm just terrible. It's in the studies, which I may or may not have linked below, and if you're really concerned, I can pull them up and bring them to you. Well, send them to you. I don't want to bring them to you. But 68% of the users in that second study used it for romantic or intimate discussions, if you catch my drift. So granted, these are different studies, but if we were to extrapolate kind of that data and throw them together, that would mean that out of the 72% of those who use, 68% of that, which I don't know the math, you could figure it out, use it for intimate discussions. Then we add on to the fact that not everybody who's using the chatbots are 18, and in fact, a lot of the younger generations are more technologically inclined. There's a lot of that going around too. Protect your kids. Make sure they don't do nothing stupid. Well, you know, you can only go so far, obviously. I remember myself as a child. Not good. Yeah, it was hard. I was what they call a hellion. But we'll couple that with the predatory design of chatbots. See, a lot of them are specifically designed to make suggestive comments or sexual advances, and then say, basically request a paywall to go further. So not only are these people pre-programming their large language models to initiate those conversations for a quick buck, but the thing is you cannot verify that everybody who is using it is of age. Now I get it. It's a good way. It's a good first layer of making sure that those who use chatbots for that specific activity have age verification. But to me, I feel like there should be more layers than simply just that, and there should be actual enforcement instead of predatory monetization. Then we mash that together with the very nature of developing an app, and that's the fact that you want engagement. So whether it's for monetary gain or selling information, so not only are you making it predatory towards like the monetary aspect, and then also exposing younger individuals to that kind of material, but then you are also trying to develop the large language model to be able to retain as much engagement as possible. So it just compiles, and then to put one final ugly cherry on top, according to Stanford University. Man, I've referenced them way too much. Maybe I should just start reading their reports. Might not be a bad idea. Just go through Stanford reports. That'd be pretty cool. They found that those who suffer from mental, I don't know how to say this politically correct, so I'm just going to say disabilities, such as like anxiety, depression, suffer from suicidal tendencies. They found that those people who actually use the companion apps did not find themselves feeling better afterwards. In fact, a lot of them reported feeling worse because they actually isolated more from those around them and instead tried to feed themselves, I think they said, social fast food or something like that. It's a weird analogy. Basically, they were substituting real interaction with fake interaction, and obviously it didn't work out well. So this brings me to the end. Contrary to popular belief, well, not popular belief, contrary to the belief of those who know me, I'm not necessarily a Luddite. I occasionally, myself, will use Google's AI because I am constantly looking stupid things up. Granted, I look up the AI, or I look it up on Google, and then I read what Google says, and then I click on the little thing that has, this is where I pulled it from, so that I myself can read the original material just to verify. But I do not think that AI is inherently evil. I think that it reflects what it is created, or who created it. And with my worldview, and now I assume others don't necessarily have the same worldview I do, and that's perfectly fine. But with my worldview, I view humanity as inherently fallen and constantly struggling with its own evil. So if we were to create something that mimics humanity, it is also going to suffer from the exact same pitfalls that we do. My argue is that AI, if left unchecked, will destroy our critical thinking. It will exploit the innocent, and it will defile the intimate and sacred. And it will isolate us from other actual real human interaction as well. So if we follow that, at that point, after it's done that, I have to ask what makes us human at that point. If we have no critical thinking, no information retention, if we have nothing sacred, nothing intimate, and if we have nothing innocent, what does that make us? I don't know. I'm sure people will tell me that I'm an absolute Luddite and terrible human being. Actually, I had to put on the vest for the amount of strays I was catching in my last video. Bro, I'm just here to promote discussion, okay? I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here to, I'm here to, try and convince you of what I believe. But at the same time, it's like, you hungry? Let's go get some food. Anyways, I'll leave it with this. If you like what I did, or if you like what we talked about, feel free to share what you think. If you didn't like what we talked about, feel free to share what you think. If you really liked it, then, feel free to support me on Patreon. If you really disliked it, please support me by commenting down below. That'd be great. Maybe share it with other people that would dislike it so that they can also be mad about it. It'd be super sick to see a video made because I'm just an idiot, because it's like 70% correct. Okay, now the actual outro. Avoid the harlot, protect the weak, and love those around you. And above all else, stay restless.